Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The World According to Sam Marshall. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Robyn Harris. Robyn and I met, well, it feels like we met years ago, but in reality, it was literally November last year when I joined a particular networking group. Over that period of time, Robyn has been one of the most regular people that I come in contact with at the networking, and I've learned lots about her. I absolutely love how she is, who she is, and what she does. So let me read you her LinkedIn bio. Empowering you to gently break free from fear, overwhelm, and disease. But that is said, dis-ease. And I'm absolutely sure Robyn will explain that as we go through. I help you unlock your body's natural wisdom for true, lasting well-being using my highly effective, now this is a registered trademark, we'll have to have a look at it, W-I-L-D approach. So Robyn, welcome.
Thank you, Sam. It's a joy to be here. I'm so looking forward to how this conversation is going to develop.
Wow, we sort of just let it ramble a little bit and wind and go wherever it is. I want it to be about 30 minutes. I'm pretty useless at that, and we tend to roll on. But you know, we will get there. So just before we started the podcast, we were having a quick catch up on my health and why it is that outside of this, I want to come to you and have time with you and learn more about this 57-year-old body that I think I know. But really now for the audience, I'd love you to give me how did you arrive here? What brought you to this point? And definitely to explain dis-ease.
Right. So if I go off on a tangent, which is quite likely, do bring me back in and do let me make sure that I answer all of the parts of that question.
No problem.
It started because, to kind of put it in a nutshell, I found myself back where I'd been in the past. I'd had burnout, I'd been diagnosed with ME, and then I pretty much got better and I'd got back to living my life and life had gone on. And then in my early 30s, I found myself right back, seeing myself on that slippery slope downwards, feeling miserable and very much if that would change and if they were different and point outwards. And just like I said, totally miserable. Life felt like it wasn't worth living. And I, inside me, believed there's nothing I can do. It's never going to change. What's the point? And then my husband said to me one day, you've had a sense of humor bypass. You're not the person that I met. You're not the person that I married. Whack. And that was a massive wake-up call for me because I was just feeling sorry for myself. I was totally in victimhood and not realizing how much what I was going through was impacting on everybody around me. And when he said that, it was, whoa. This can't carry on, not just for me, but for everybody around me, because I'm making their lives miserable. I don't want to go on. They don't want to go on with me. So I got to do something. And I knew it wasn't going to work, but my mother would have called me Thran. So I decided, I had to go down the medical route. I didn't really want to. I didn't believe it was going to help me, which is probably why it didn't. But I went to the doctor and I got put on medication, took one tablet, was so spaced out, I promised myself, I'm never going to do that to myself again.
Wow.
And I got referred for counselling. I'd had counselling in the past. It was a total disaster, but I'm going to prove that this isn't going to work. So I went and it was okay, but it wasn't moving me forward. And it was only relatively recently that looking back, I thought, I know now why it didn't work. And it would never work for me because the more medication I took, not just that one, because as I say, I only took one pill, but in other medication that I was on previously, I felt more dependent, and I just sometimes, you just take one thing, then you need something else, and then you need something else, or the dose is increased. I didn't want that to be my life. And with the counseling, I just felt I was dependent on somebody, because as I say, this thing's wrong, that thing wrong. I wanted them to wave a magic wand and make it all better, and then my life would just be perfect.
I think we all want that.
Exactly. So neither of those things worked for me, and I was then left with the decision, what do I do now? It didn't work. Counseling didn't work. Where do I go next? And although something in me just wanted to give up and walk away, I knew that wasn't an option either. So being a bookworm, I turned to books. And I also actually did an online course. It was a 9-month course based on a book. And it was life-changing for me, because it was called Evolutionary Enlightenment. And it was all about our perspective and how we look at the world and how we see ourselves within the world, which is basically the seed that went on into what I do now. Because it shifted me. And in the books that I was reading, I'm a quote queen. I love quotes. So one of the first ones was, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. We're looking through our filters, which are determined by our thoughts and our beliefs and the things that we engage with in our head over a period of time. That creates those filters. My filters were like a pair of really dirty glasses. So everything I looked at appeared grey and mucky, and there was no colour and no joy in it. But it was the glasses. I wasn't really aware of that, because that's what I was seeing. I needed to take the glasses off. So that was the first step in realising that. And then Wayne Dyer's beautiful quote, that when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And I spent quite a lot of time reflecting on that, and I guess kind of meditating on that. And then I came across Bruce Lipton's, the moment you change your perception is the moment you rewrite the chemistry of your body. And by that time, I was suffering from a lot of kind of niggling, smallish conditions. I had IBS, I had eczema, I had anxiety. There was quite a list. And also I was borderline fibromyalgia, diabetes, and the doctors were telling me, if you don't do something quickly, you are going to be actually slapped with all of these labels. But if I could realize that it was my way of looking at the world, and I could change that, and that would rewrite the chemistry of my body, would my body start to feel better? Oh, well, there's an experiment I could do, because that is inside of me. That is theoretically within my control. So that was the journey that I set out on, feeling like I have no provisions, I have no map, I have no compass, I have no idea where I'm going. But hey, let's do this. And I went on that journey, and I went on quite a scenic route for that journey. And it was, ups and downs and lefts and rights and all over the place. They say we think we want our life to be from A to B, straight line, but no, it goes all over the shop. That was very much my experience. And at times it felt like, oh gosh, I'm back here again. I obviously didn't do things properly the first time around, or I'm never going to get through this, or why am I off on this tangent? I should have just been heading straight. What am I doing wrong? And then I came to realize nothing is wrong. It's experience. And that's kind of where wild came from, because the D of wild is dance. And if we think of, oh, my life is one step forward and 2 steps back, then we're judging our lives, we're judging ourselves, we are looking at things very negatively, versus my life's a dance. And I get to experience lots of different things and see lots of different things. And there's lots of color and there's lots of flavor, and it's all quite exciting and it's fun. Feels very different. And
I can see that. I can absolutely, that resonates with me significantly. So, yeah.
And that was my realization that it wasn't what I was looking at, it was how I was looking at it, which was from the inside. And yes, there were external influences on that because we are conditioned as we grow up, and we take that on board, and that affects our beliefs and our thoughts and creates those filters. But we can take back that responsibility. So getting back to dis-ease in a kind of a circuitous way, and in my book, I was dividing the words up like that and putting little hyphens, so dis-ease, responsibility. And my editor came back and said, you're going to have to explain this. People are going to think it's a typo, or, you know, it gets to the end of the line and the word, the second part of the word goes down to the next line. They're just going to think it's that. You need to actually explain. And for me, it's part of that perception, because if I look at something as disease, then I kind of think as that's my body's gone wrong. I have no control over that. I am requiring intervention of a medical kind. If I look at it as dis-ease, oh, my body is going through some change in my level of ease. I can do something about that. There's just, and my ease has lessened, it has shifted, but yeah, that's okay. That's just my body doing its thing. It'll go up and down and it'll change over time because life throws stuff at us and we need to adapt and we need to navigate. But that's okay. It doesn't feel like a label of, you know, that shake of the head and the sucking of air through the teeth and, oh, this is bad news. It just feels like, yeah, it's a temporary thing. I can navigate it. I can learn from it. Because if I'm not feeling ease, the journey back to feeling ease teaches me so much.
Yeah.
And responsibility is another one of those, because being the eldest older child, there were two of us, the firstborn, I felt so responsible for everything in my family. I felt responsible. My father was an interesting character, had rather volatile moods. And if he was bad-tempered, I felt it was my fault. And when my mum was worried, it was my fault. And when my brother did something that my parents disapproved of, it was my fault. I was told it was my fault. You know, and I remember being punished for something that my brother had done accidentally. I didn't know he'd done it, but it was my fault because I was the older child and should know better. Not from my mum. My mum, I don't think, was she at home at that point? Anyway, it was from my dad. As I say, an interesting character. But looking back on that now, that gives me an understanding of why I respond to things in the way that I have done, maybe still do at times. But I don't need to take that because actually it wasn't my responsibility. But my responsibility is I can take care of me now when maybe that feeling comes up, or I can choose, I'm going to let that go. It's not going to color my life from now on. And if I spot something that is a vibration of that that's still in there, I can, that's not mine, let it go. And sometimes life is a whole series of, I'll let it go, I'll let it go, I'll let it go, I'll let it go. But again, I don't think that it's a failing, that, oh gosh, I'm here again. I think it's a deeper layer. Yes, you did the work the first time around, and we're a bit oniony, aren't we, as human beings? We have many, many layers. So that first time around, we dealt with something, but it was a layer. There are other layers, but we're not ready for those yet. When we come back around and we see the same thing again, I think it's a reason to celebrate because, gosh, the universe, my body knows I'm now ready to deal with this deeper layer. That means I've learned something that I didn't have the first time around. So it's not necessarily yippee, wonderful, it all feels fantastic. It might be very deeply challenging, but I can trust that my body is bringing this up now because I'm ready. And
I think it's very interesting because I have a friend who's going through significant upheaval in his life at the moment. Everyone has it from time to time. He's dealing with a family death. and he's trying to reconcile his feelings for the person when alive with his feelings for that person now they have passed, and he wasn't sleeping. And I said, and what was it that stopped you sleeping? And he said, oh, good Lord, there's a list. And I phoned him and said, right, he will have written it down. That's his way. On your list, how many of those things are absolutely within your control to do something about them? I don't understand. Okay, if you looked out of the window and saw it was raining and that made you feel sad and that's on your list, what can you do about the weather? Nothing. That's out of your control. What can you do about your emotions? Well, I can play some Christmas carols in April, and that will make you happy. And one of his favourite sayings is, you can't change what you had for breakfast. So if it's in the past, it's done. You need to work out what your next steps are going to be. Now, I find it really, really easy to help him and say, knock off your list anything that you cannot impact. But I've probably got a list, and it's probably got things on there that are out with my control. But can I do it for myself? I almost need someone to help me be accountable for that. That I find interesting.
And I think that's true for all of us, because we all have our blind spots. And of course, we're right in the middle of our own blind spot. And it is so much easier to look at somebody else because we have that separation, we have that objectivity, we have that bit of distance, which often makes things easier to see anyway, even like physically. So yes, we can say, right, this is, like the brilliant example of, you look out the window and it's raining. Does that make you feel sad? Can you control it? Here's some other things maybe that you could focus on and you could make changes. But it is so much more difficult. I mean, even just to look at yourself is more difficult, and you can't see your own face unless you're looking in a mirror. There are parts of us that we cannot see because that's just physically not possible. And I think it's the same emotionally, cognitively, etc. So, and also we were talking before we came on air about that sense of safety. And if we have something that we've been pushing down for a long time, and initially we probably pushed it down maybe when we were very small and we didn't have the tools yet, or because it happened in a time when we weren't feeling safe, when we were feeling like, well, I don't have time for that right now, I'll have to park it. But in not looking at it, we've parked it somewhere, and the energy of that gets stored in the body, like Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score. And if we've pushed it down and pushed it down and pushed it down, that's our habit. It's our norm. We don't even see that we're doing that anymore. So that's part of a blind side as well. And we've pushed it down for a reason. So there may be things that kind of activate that from time to time, and it gives us a little poke and a little nudge, and we don't know why necessarily, but we feel a bit uncomfortable. So we push it down. We don't look at it. We don't take it out and unpack it. We just, oh, that's uncomfortable. Like if you're sitting or you're carrying a backpack and you get a bit uncomfortable, you just adjust. You adjust your sitting position, or you adjust the backpack and you carry on. So that's what we do. This thing's poking me, and I'll make a slight adjustment and I'll carry on. Because if we've got a niggling headache or a bit of a scratchy, rashy thing, we don't necessarily think much of it. We just put on a bit of cream, take a headache pill, and carry on, rather than, oh, maybe this is my body with a message for me. Maybe this is an invitation to get curious. Where's this headache coming from? You know what? I haven't had a drink of water, and it's a really warm day. Where's this rash coming from? Well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. We can get curious, and then we can address the issue. But if we've been pushing this little niggle down for so long, it can be quite difficult to find it, to pack it. And if it hasn't felt safe to do so in the past, you know, that can of worms, it feels like a can of worms. And I think that if I open it, then all hell can break loose. But also, if I'm not feeling safe in this moment, because there's just too many demands on my time, I don't have time for that. It'll just have to stay parked for now. And we keep on doing that.
Yeah.
Which is why it can be so good to work with somebody else who can hold that space.
What I found interesting, I talked to you earlier about having reflexology at the weekend, and how I got offered a choice at the beginning to be fully involved in it or just let it happen. And I chose to just let it happen. And for context for my watchers, the arch of my foot, this part of my foot is always really, really tight. And in reflexology, I know that there's one part that is the kidney, one part that is the pancreas, and one part that is the liver in there. It's also in the hand somewhere, but I'm not quite, I think it might be this, but I could be wrong. Well, that tracks absolutely for me because I'm diabetic. So I understand that there might be something there. Well, she was working away and doing her stuff. And she gave me some feedback at the end that I took on board. And she told me my 7-year-old self didn't feel safe, which I thought, gosh, I've never actually ever needed to talk to my 7-year-old self. So that was interesting in itself. And I did that. And whether it was a natural outcome of reflexology, my feet for 3 days felt absolutely brilliant. And now they're just going back to starting to pull again. I'm thinking, okay, I think I'd better talk to my 7-year-old self again and see how that impacts. But the universe has done some wonderful things and has brought some wonderful people into my path that have allowed me to question my blind faith and my blind respect for the NHS. I do believe that if you are in an emergency situation, there is no better place to be. No matter where in the United Kingdom you are, in an emergency, you are in the best hands ever. Long-term conditions, however, starts to become subjective based on the belief of the person you're sat in front of and your own interaction with whatever your condition is. So mine is diabetes, and I was diagnosed in my 30s. And I was put on tablets that I never remembered to take. And I had an awful diet to start with. I then went to Weight Watchers and I followed their plan, and I lost 7.5 stone in 2 years. But as I always say on that one, when you go from eating pizza, Indian and Chinese and fish and chips every night to eating healthy food prepared by hand, stir-fried, etc., you are going to lose weight. To my viewers, I'm just about to apologise. My cat has decided to join me, so we're going to have a tail in front of the face. I do apologise. So I know that when I follow that plan of eating, and for me, Weight Watchers was healthy eating, I could lose the weight. What I couldn't do was maintain it. I then tried Slimming World. I tried Rosemary Conley. I tried, well, if there's a diet out there that's got a title, I probably tried it in my 47 years. And that in itself, I now realize, messes up my body internally, because it's going, what are you doing to me now, woman? Are you going to starve me of calories? Are you going to take away a food group? Are you going to live on soup? What are you going to do? In 2023, I was going to say my inability to take tablets, but in 2023, my decision to not take my diabetic tablets landed me in hospital with an abscess that was suppurating. I presented to the doctors at 10:30 in the morning. I was sent to the hospital for 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was admitted by 2:15 and I was on the operating table at 6 p.m. I spent a week in hospital, and during that time, the consultant came over and said, "You are leaving here with a concoction of 4 tablets." I said, "For what purpose?" "For diabetes." "No, I'm not, because I do not remember to take tablets, and we've tried everything, setting an alarm, doing a 7-day pill box, having someone ask me if I'd taken my tablets. I just don't do it. I want insulin." Big discussion, argument ensued. That went on for 48 hours. I left the hospital with insulin. That same professor saw me for my first consult and said, "Right, how old are you?" So at the time, I would have been 55. And he said, "Right, well, you're going to die at 67. And there are certain things in a sentence that make you stop listening. And that's one of them. So he went on to say, "You live in Argyll. So because you live in Argyll, our average age of mortality is 79 years of age. You have just shaved 12 years off of that." Sorry, it must be 7. No, it was 79. That's right. "You've just shaved 12 years off of that through your dreadful diabetes management. You are going to die at 67. He then went on to try to explain to me how a long-acting and a short-acting insulin injection worked, how carbohydrates worked. What am I thinking? Oh, I'm going to die in 12 years. I actually came home and told my husband, who was all for thumping the professor. But I went round to all my friends and said, "Right, you've only got me for 12 years, so you better make good use of me." Now, with distance between that appointment and now, I believe that that was the professor's very clumsy way of bringing me up short to take notice. It really had almost the opposite effect. And they now get very upset in the medical profession when they say to me, "Why aren't you taking your blood pressure medication? Why aren't you having a statin? Because, you're going to shorten your life." And I look at them deadpan and say, "I don't want a long life if that long life for me means that I am incapable rocking and dribbling in the corner of a room with someone having to change my nappies, as I've just seen family members go through. I don't want that. I would rather die early." They've decided that I have sleep apnea. 2 years ago, they decided I had sleep apnea. I haven't got the machine yet. But I did say in one of my conversations with them, "Well, I don't have to accept the machine, do I?" And they said, "No." So, "Well, you're going to die sometime." Now, because I've got the ability to go and research, because I have people like you around me that can offer me knowledge in a different way and offer me a suggestion, I have very little time for a doctor that wants to push pills on me, unless it is because I've got infected whatevers and need antibiotics. I'll take that. But my eyes have been opened quite recently. The universe has put a lot of people in my path that have all experienced what you've experienced and how you've gone on to shape your life to move forward. And I'm very grateful for the universe giving me that opportunity. I'm very grateful that I can have meetings with you privately, professionally, and we can unpack this and unravel this, and maybe we will find the reason. At the beginning and the end of this video, I'm actually going to put up contact details for you, Robyn. But something you mentioned previously, you talked about your book. I don't suppose you've got one to hand, have you? I thought
Funny
you
you
might.
should say that. Perfect Blue
Well,
Peter styly. Here's one I prepared earlier.
can you tell us about it?
It's basically my story. So what I was sharing with you earlier and how Wild came about. I shared the D of Wild, but just to keep it short, the WILD, it stands for wonder, which is for me that idea of perception and how we look at the world and how we look at ourselves within the world. And I think that so many of us, as we grow older and we have this conditioning, and there's a lot of fear in the conditioning that we receive. I mean, just look at the news these days. It's kind of an obvious example. So we take on board all of these things, these beliefs and these thoughts and these ways of looking at the world, and we become cynical and we become jaded and we become fearful. Versus if you have a small child in your life, a toddler, or if you've ever known a toddler, what are they like? Everything's new and it's exciting and it's wonderful. And why does that? And what's that? And all, you cannot keep up with their questions. So they have curiosity, they have wonder, they have joy, they have excitement, and they are like sponges and they just want more. And I love the film Short Circuit as well. Input, need input. So wonder is the responsibility we have to shift, to choose that way of looking at the world. And that's not to say that we are in there 24/7, 365. But when we catch ourselves feeling less than wonderful, then we can choose, actually, I want to get back to that. It might not be something I can do right in this moment, because right in this moment, maybe things are deeply painful and challenging. I know you've been through a lot of bereavements recently. You talked about your friend. I lost 2 very close friends of the 4-legged kind recently. So at times like that, if you're not feeling able to shift back into joy straight away, that's okay. But still, even in that place, you can know there is joy because I loved them. That's why the grief hurts so much. Grief is love with nowhere to go. Grief can be confusion. Grief can be that sense of aching emptiness that they've left behind. But we have that because we had something with that other who is now no longer there. So that's W. I is intuition. We get so much information, misinformation, overwhelm, overload thrown at us. We've disconnected from our own inner knowing. And you said something earlier about it being your body. You've lived in this body all of your life. You have walked in your shoes all of your life. You're meeting a medical professional who is very well trained, very knowledgeable, but they've never spent even a minute in your shoes. They have never lived your life. They don't know all the things that have gone into creating Sam Marshall. They don't know what is Sam Marshall's average day like right now at this time. What stresses are you under? What are you dealing with? What are you navigating and managing? They don't know any of that other than the symptom that you have come along with. So they are dealing with that small, tiny, minuscule little part of you without the context that surrounds it, and particularly in the medical system that we have here in the UK, which is so, I look at this part and I won't look at anything else. So if I have a bone problem, I'll go to that doctor. If I have a joint problem, I'll go to that doctor. If I have a heart problem, I'll go to that doctor. If I have diabetes, I'll go to that doctor. And they don't talk to each other. And they maybe see things quite differently. So you'll get maybe one prescription from one doctor and another prescription, and they clash.
Yeah.
And this current systems, your best bet for something like that is actually to go to a pharmacist, not a doctor, because the pharmacist is more trained on the medications and will be able to say, you can't take that with that, or you need to take this at this time and then that separate at a different time, and you need to take this with food and that without food, and don't drink coffee when you're taking that one, and all of those sorts of things that the doctor won't tell you. And the medications are generally based on Mr. Average. Mr. Average. Who of us, and particularly if you are a woman, who is Mr. Average? So how can you say that that dosage is right for me of that medication? Because I'm not the standard that you've used to work that out. So even if you get a medication, don't be afraid to go back to your doctor and say, I need a review, because this is not supporting me right now. I don't feel well, or I'm having this additional symptom, I'm having this side effect. Don't be afraid to go back. And if they won't listen, then maybe you need a second opinion, because that needs to be a certain amount of negotiation to make sure you're getting the right dose for you in your situation and in your life. So
I think it's also true. It's a bit like our 5 to 18 education system. There's so much packed into it now that if you happen to be off sick on the day they're doing ingrowing toenails, for example, that's it. Unless you catch it up yourself, you've missed the training on ingrowing toenails.
And they don't get training on nutrition. No. Or, you know, minimal training on nutrition. And a lot of the training
go on.
A lot of the training they get on the drugs actually comes from the company that makes the drugs, not from, you know, so it's very biased anyway.
The really interesting point for me, in order to help manage my diabetes on insulin, I was given a nutritionist. And so I was keeping full food diaries, calories, carbs, fat, etc., and sending it to both diabetic nurse and nutritionist. When diabetic nurse put me on Mounjaro, nutritionist said, I'm sorry, I'm no longer allowed to support you because you're on Mounjaro, and therefore that's a contraindication. I said, tell me you're having a laugh here. And she said, no, absolutely not. I can no longer have any interaction with you whatsoever. I did 16 weeks of Mounjaro before I decided that I was worse off on it than I was without it. I came off. My diabetic nurse was very upset with me. I told my nutritionist that I decided I was going to follow the keto way of life, and she said, I'm sorry, we can't rubber stamp that for you because we don't have enough training. And my diabetic nurse said, I cannot now what were her words? I cannot agree to you going onto keto. There is not sufficient long-term research on the effects of diabetics and keto. To which I replied, and there is on Mounjaro, ? And I haven't actually spoken to either of them since. I've had my blood test today for diabetes, and I suspect my diabetic nurse will be in touch, and that will be the first time I speak to her in, well, practically a year.
Wow. And things like that, they're quite scary to me, that the nutritionist would turn around and say, well, we can't have anything more to do with you. But where, you know, don't you need more support at that point?
I would have thought so. Absolutely. Because my 16-week journey with Mounjaro was very up and down, but I went into it not having acid reflux, not being sick, and not having depression, to 12 weeks down the line losing 3 days a week of my time through being sick, through feeling constantly nauseous, and through not having any get up and go. It had definitely got up and gone, and I could stare out of the window at 11 o'clock in the morning, and the next thing I knew, it'd be 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
But is that not a huge red flag to say there's something not right here?
Apparently not. I wasn't trying hard enough.
What more can you do other than say no thanks?
Yeah, what more I did was said no thanks. I'm not prepared any longer to do it. And there are some people out there that I know are having phenomenal results with MJ, Truly, Ozempic, etc. They really are having a wonderful time, and I wish them every success and long may it last. For me, it didn't work. I lost 4 kilos in 16 weeks.
Because you weren't eating, not because you were healthier.
Yes, absolutely. I did 2 weeks on keto, quite strict keto to start with, 'tis true, but I did 2 weeks on keto and lost 7 kilos. So I say to everybody watching, there is something out there that for you. Your body, as Robyn has said earlier, is very unique. You know your body, no one else knows your body, and you will know the things that you can do with your body that perhaps other people with the same condition can't or don't. But I now go to the NHS if I have an emergency, when I need to do my blood test so they can tick their boxes and write their bits down. And other than that, I say, no, thank you. I don't want your help because it hinders me.
And for me, my aim for myself and for those that I work with is to get healthier. And okay, there are situations where you will feel worse for a while. So having reflexology can end up with you having a headache because your body is detoxing, but not for that to go on for a long period of time. And for that to go on under supervision. So your reflexologist should be letting you know that that may happen, advising you on what to stay well hydrated and to eat lightly after a session and so on. And if you do get anything like that and you feel you need help, get back in touch or see a medical professional. But to go on feeling that ill for that long and to them not saying, right, we need to review this because you shouldn't be that nauseous. Yes, I know that nausea is a side effect, but that you're 3 days a week not able to function, how long do you carry that on for before they turn around and say, right, we need to try something else? And I heard a story of somebody else who was on a home tablet form of chemotherapy. And I don't think it was for cancer because I know that they're using chemotherapy drugs for a lot of other things now. But they were very ill. Chemotherapy is quite well known that you can get very ill on chemotherapy. And again, nausea, throwing up, vomiting, etc. And they were carrying on, taking it, not feeling any better, not getting any benefits, but the doctor said, so I need to keep taking this. And there's that sense of they know better, they have given me this, and they probably have given it to you for the best of reasons because they've learnt, they've been taught, possibly by the drug manufacturer, that this works for this situation. Yeah. But we all know, and the pills come with little pieces of paper inside saying there can be these side effects. If this happens, contact your pharmacist, contact your doctor. You don't have to keep suffering through this. And you don't know necessarily what else it's doing in your body. And like you say, what is the research out there, the long-term research on things like MJ? So I would always recommend go speak to a pharmacist, go speak to your GP or whoever has prescribed this medication and let them know how ill you maybe are on it, or that it's not working, or whatever side effects it's giving you, and ask for a review. And if they won't do it, then I would be questioning why.
Absolutely. So let's do a recap. We've done W, we've done I. Have we finished I, and have we touched L yet?
Just to finish off I is intuition. So we get all of this conditioning, which actually separates us from our intuition. It teaches us to rely on the external information rather than the information that we have for ourselves. Like the example of, no, you need to take this medication, using that because that's what we've been talking about. And your body is saying, no, I feel ill, or my get up and go has got up and gone. And I lose whole days again and again and again and again. And nothing is changing. Nothing's getting better. If I was losing 2 days and then, oh my goodness, I feel amazing, and I carry on feeling amazing, or I start to gradually improve, that's okay. But when I'm losing days repeatedly and nothing is getting any better, that raises alarm bells and questions for me. So intuition is starting to listen to, respond to, build up the trust in my own inner knowing. And that can be a challenge in our modern busy world, which is so noisy. There are radios playing and there's televisions on and there's Facebook and Instagram and bombardment, news 24/7, 365. Where's the space for stillness and quiet? And a lot of us, we're so conditioned to the noise that it's really uncomfortable to get still and be quiet, because I have a little voice in my head telling me you should be doing something. Why are you sitting still? Where's the stimulation? Where's the input? Rather than just, ooh, my input is from within. Because that little inner voice is a very quiet voice. It whispers. And it's just that little, uh-huh, uh-uh, uh-huh. And how do we hear that above the external noise? So that practice, grounding ourselves, getting still, getting quiet, getting comfortable in that. And that takes some time. I thought of it during COVID, like the world just suddenly, right, we have to stop. Everybody stay at home. Don't go anywhere. Don't do anything. It was like being on a roundabout that suddenly you jump off. And that's very disorientating. And initially, if you jump off, you might feel very giddy and a bit sick. But as you get used to, oh, this is the pace of life now. I remember at the end when we were starting to come back to life again, everybody was saying, oh, I'm going to miss this stillness, the quiet, the being at home, the growing my own veg, the cooking from scratch, and the time to just chill and relax and all of that. I must make time for that when we get back to life as it kind of used to be. And now we're busier than ever. Where did we make time for all of those things? I'm sure some people did, but by and large, I'm just hearing people saying, I'm exhausted, I'm so busy, I just can't keep up. I always feel like I'm on the back foot. I feel like I'm playing catch up all the time. There aren't enough hours in the day. But that, again, is our responsibility to make those times.
I totally agree with you. And I sat there yesterday morning. Hubby goes to work at about 6:30 in the morning. And I get up about 7:30, and the sun rises at the back of our house and sets at the front. So I've opened the curtains. At the back. We've got a lovely garden. We've got a lovely farmer's field beyond that. And I just sat there, and the birds were singing loudly through the closed window. They were singing loudly. Sun was shining. There was a gentle breeze blowing. And I just sat there for a minute and went, oh. And then the men started drilling down the road. Just like, oh. But there was just that few minutes of, and I remember that lockdown times, like you were saying, we'd been here 3 years by the time lockdown came. We live in a town of 2,500 people. We are the third largest town in Argyll and Bute, but we are in the top 5% remote and rural. You can hear a pin drop here most of the time. But when COVID came, you almost dropped your voice a couple of sort of notches because it was so quiet. And I'm probably about half a mile as the crow flies from the loch, from the head of the loch, and there would be a piper every day standing down at the memorial that would pipe. Yeah, absolutely would pipe.
I'm getting goosebumps.
And on a Thursday, you'd have the whole pipe band down there with the drums, and it comes up the valley, and it was truly amazing.
Magical.
Yeah. So, Elle.
There's a thing that goes around social media now and again, and it says, have you been beating up on yourself for some time now? Has it made a difference? No, why don't you try loving yourself instead? And that's what Ella is about, because we do criticize ourselves, and we live in a world that is full of criticism and judgment and a lot of shame. And we take all of that on board and we start to apply it. You know, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too fat, you're too thin, your hair's the wrong color, your eyes are the wrong color, you're too old, you're too young. All of these judgments that we then take on board, or, you know, we hear them being applied to somebody else and we think, yeah, but that's how I look as well. You know, I wear glasses as well, or I've got freckles, or whatever it might be. And that becomes internalized. And as well, if maybe we're not particularly academic, or it took us a few attempts to pass our driving test, that gets added in as well. So I'm obviously not smart. I'm obviously no good at driving. And, you know, we apply it quite globally in that sense. Well, that means that I'm not good at anything and I'm a failure. And so we take all these voices in and they're chattering away to us all the time in our heads. Why don't we switch those for ones that are saying, you know, you're amazing. You know, the way you just spoke to that person, that was so lovely. Or, you know, the way you're a really good cook. Or you are amazing gardener. Or, you know, the way you just love listening to the bird song. That's magical. Why don't we speak to ourselves more like that? That's how we might speak to a child or a good friend or someone that we love, but it's not how we speak to ourselves. And yet that's the voice that we hear more than we hear anybody else's, because it's with us 24/7. So maybe it's time to shift, because again, it's that thing of feeling safe. If I am living with a critic, when do I ever feel safe? Because it's going to be judging me and criticizing me all of the time. But if I live with an inner voice that's going, yeah, you did that well. Or you might not have got it that time, but you really tried. And kudos for trying. You'll get it next time. How much better is my inner world going to feel?
It's just a different, it's just a different way of looking at it, isn't it? And you're absolutely right. I dropped a podcast on the 29th of April that I'd done with Wendy Corner. I know that you know Wendy. And there is a part in that, to probably about 3/4 of the way through, where we touch on inner mind chatter as well. So it's interesting that there are themes that come through. But when I first met my friend Jay, one of the first things I said to him is, what's great in your world? Now, I didn't make this up. Somebody else did, and I'm really sorry that I can't reference them. But I just remember, whether they were talking about at the time, they'd said, as a British person, you'd go, hi, how are you? Oh, well, my back hurts and my knees are creaking and my elbow. If you start that with, hi, what's great in your world? It breaks up or interrupts their thought pattern. And what they need to come back with then is, well, the sun's shining and I had a lovely cup of tea this morning, and it just sets the brain on a different path. Now, Jay picked that up because it stopped him in his tracks. He uses what's great with you every day to the people that he meets. And I think between us, that's a small ripple that we send out to put some joy and love in the world.
And it sets the tone for the whole conversation then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I like that. I may have to lovingly lift, which is a phrase I learned recently. I'm going to lovingly lift that one.
Well, I know I lifted it from someone else. I absolutely know I lifted it from someone else. So by all means, I give it to you. I gift it to you.
Thank you.
Who wants it that's watching the podcast? So you are a fascinating lady. I adore talking to you. I meet you on a Monday at Networking for Good, and there's something really interesting for me about that networking group. And I think I say this on every podcast, so regular viewers will be bored of this by now. For those of you new to my podcast, Networking for Good says in their website when you're signing up, if you're coming in to sell your stuff, we are not the group for you. If you want to come and build some relationships and learn and expand, we welcome you with open arms. And it is very true. And there's something about a Monday morning at 11 o'clock UK time that I find refreshing. It empowers me. It charges me up somehow. And that's the collective. So we have people from America, we have people from Australia or Malaysia, depending on where Wendy is at any given time. Richard's done it from the snow slopes. We have people from all around the UK. But that which unites us on Networking for Good is just that holding of each other, that helping of each other. And then Richard asked the killer question in business that you have to go and think about and explode your brain. So I've absolutely loved being part of the group. I continue to be part of the group, and the people like yourself that it brings me into contact with, and I see that as a real blessing.
I completely agree. And it's interesting that some people say if you go to a networking group, you want to see different faces, and therefore you're talking to different people, because you're not just talking to the people in the room, you're talking to their networks. But you're right, there's something very, very special about Networking for Good. And although it is generally the usual suspects who come along with a few changes now and again, but I think I have done more collaboration through that group. And I've not been in it all that long compared to some of the other groups that I've belonged to. And I look forward to it. I have enjoyed the meetings very much because you get to meet with friends and you get to do it in a business way. So you are covering both stones, and you are learning so much business-wise because of Richard's killer questions, but in so many other ways as well. Just humanity and getting to meet people like Shell from America and all of the amazing work that he does, or Ben from Uganda and his incredible story, or Wendy and her globe trotting and her way of, is it less than 25 kilos? Is it 25 kilos?
Life in 20 kilos.
So all of those things that you get to be a fly on the wall with and learn from, it is an incredible and just such a lovely, welcoming, safe space holding group.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would agree. So Wendy, have we covered your book? Have we covered Wild? Have we covered you substantially for this time round?
I think, yes, we have. It has been a joy. Like I said at the beginning, I was looking forward to seeing how this conversation went, and we have been here, there, and everywhere. It's been a joy. Thank you, Sam.
Well, do you know what? There'll be slots in the future, and I'm sure when you've got something you want to share, you can come back and have another chat, and that's lovely. But for now, those of you tuning in to The World According with Sam Marshall, I bid you good evening. We will be back in another couple of weeks, and who knows, you might have Richard, you might have Kate, you might have Tom, and you don't know these people yet, but you will soon. So thanks for tuning in this week. See you soon.
Thanks, Sam. Bye.